Hi, y'all. I'm Kate Wolf. I'm the co-chair and head of programming here at Do the Work alongside my other co-chair, Graham Nolan. Thank you guys for joining the episode of Hey Fam and Do the Work. Today, we're going to have Justin Shiels, creative director and founder of Curious Tribe. We'll be chatting with Experiential creative director, Aaron Lovejoy. Two creative directors, same family. But before we jump in and I get off screen, I just wanted to lay a little bit of groundwork and remind everybody about Do the Work. So we're, as most of you know, a queer grassroots organization, creative community, and platform. We look to empower marketers and the ad industry alike to inspire, reward, and celebrate queer creativity in marketing and advertising culture. We know that active inclusion for queer talent unleashes untapped potential. So no code switching, no making sure that you are 100% yourself all the time will advance work, but also advance business. And we are true believers that when somebody feels 100% themselves, they can put 100% into the work and everyone wins. So today we're going to have a discussion around how we, but most importantly, you guys, stay creative, connect, and be a part of that queer community, especially during this unprecedented time, and keeping us all inspired to do the damn work. So here's what you can expect. Our amazing guests, Aaron and Justin, are going to talk for about a half hour, and they're going to stay focused, really diving into their own creative process, their own histories, things like that. They won't be monitoring the chats, so no need to comment there, but we will be monitoring the Q&A section, but not the chat. So please submit any questions you have into that Q&A button below. Near the end of the show, our producer, Wes, he's going to read questions out loud for the last 10 minutes for both Aaron and Justin to respond to. So please submit your questions and we'll be able to do that. Also, creativity is a positive energy, but we have to make sure we have some ground rules to maintain that energy and make sure everybody feels like this is a safe space. So questions, they can be honest, they can be challenging, but we ask that they remain kind. We want to keep the focus on the work itself and the talent and the culture of advertising. So this is a very broad topic, so we should have no trouble there with you guys coming up with great questions. As you know, we will try to get to as many questions as we can, but we're only keeping 10 minutes. So if there's 50 questions in there, hopefully we can get back to you in the next one. Or please feel free to email us if there's something that you feel like we should be talking about, because we're happy to iterate. This is a really fun and iterative program. So please bring any comments and questions to us. All right, I think housekeeping items are done. We're gonna let our amazing guests introduce themselves and kick off the conversation. And so with that, please welcome Justin and Aaron.
Hey there.
Hello, how's it going?
It's great, Aaron. Wait, so I would love to just learn more about you and your career experience.
Great, well, I want to do the same with you. So I am a cross-disciplinary sparkle kid who wants to live inside of a rainbow of love.
Yes, love it, love it, love it.
I'm not making any apologies for that. But
This background is beautiful, by the way.
Just thank you. Most of my life is irradiated space trash. That's really the vibe that I'm looking for. Space junk, rainbow trash, all of that. Lizard kind of colors. Yeah, so I went to school for graphic design and then worked at Wieden & Kennedy and kind of got exposed to broadcast media and advertising for a while, and felt really unfulfilled creatively there and became quite a harsh critic of the industry. Oops. And then have morphed into more of an experiential designer, building spaces for people and brands. And my last role was creative director at Google and Mountain View. And since then I've gone rogue and been freelance, but yeah, but just a very hands-on art excited lizard boy.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay, cool.
Yeah, But I'm curious about you. Like I've kind of been stalking your social channels, and it looks like you have a really cool mix of writing with illustration and creative direction. And you're a very positive person, which I think is makes you an outlier
Thank
in the
you.
industry a little.
In a depressed world.
Yeah, I'm curious about your background as well. Like, what led you to becoming this multi-passionate positivity force?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so my career started specifically with the desire to work in advertising. I saw the movie Boomerang when I was a little kid and loved it. It's like this Eddie Murphy classic. It does not hold up to the test of time for a number of
Okay.
reasons. I watched it at like 9 or 10 and knew that I wanted to be a creative director in an ad agency.
Oh,
Because seeing like people on screen with these jobs was just like beyond inspiring. And so I started off at a tiny agency in New Orleans, moved to the largest agency in New Orleans, and I worked in advertising the first stint for 4 years. I went back and got a master's because I wanted to move into the gallery world, and didn't like it, didn't enjoy it. I worked at a museum and it was not my wave at all. Left the museum and worked for an arts high school. I did that for 3 years. And then I started my own graphic design shop, did that for 3 years. While I was doing that, I ran a conference. I did a little publication called Invade NOLA about the city of New Orleans, like independent culture in New Orleans. And ultimately landed at a social media shop as creative director. And then now I just relocated to Austin, Texas, where I'm an associate creative director at a very traditional digital agency. It's called Springbox. I love it. And I love Austin. I like being here. So I think I've been all over the place from a career perspective, but like it's all been like communications or advertising or like you said, copy and art direction. So yeah, I'm an ad guy.
okay, okay. I'm curious if you were like me when you were in design school and you thought that when you graduated, you would be surrounded by queers.
I mean, that was the weird thing, right? Like in university, I definitely thought there would be more gay people in school with me, and like that was just not my experience. It was weird. Like I didn't have that many gay friends in the department, which just like looking back, that does not make sense to me. Like, have you ever had a queer boss before?
Nope. um, and that has, now that you asked me that, it really has colored my experience. I think that, mentorship is a major part of the creative work, and not having queer leadership to follow has been a struggle, to be honest. Like you're kind of building the airplane while you're flying it. But have you had a queer boss before?
It's weird. Like I have had the unique experience. Like most of my bosses have been gay men, which is insane. And those that weren't gay men have been women. And so like I have had a very unique career. My first three bosses were all gay men. I would say like what's been different about my experience in advertising and not in advertising has especially been in the creative department at agencies. I've almost always been the only Black person there, and so like I think for me, my gay identity has been like a connection point. But in most of the spaces and in the majority of the meetings that I'm in, I am kind of alone in that regard of being like a Black person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So having queer bosses, I'm curious. I'd like to know a little more since that's such a foreign concept to me. Did you have any of those queer bosses when you were starting your career, like in your formative, like first 5 years?
Yeah.
And was that something that you were able to model yourself as like, oh, I could grow into this position based on the behavior that was being, how you were being stewarded, I guess?
Yeah. My first boss, I will say he was not the best representation of influence, like fully. He was not the type of leader that I wanted to be. But my second boss, I worked at an agency called Peter Mayer, and my creative director at the time, his name is Neil. And Neil is one of the most influential people in my life in regards to helping me to, one, lead with empathy, but then two, specifically help me accountable to doing my best work all the time, consistently. And I think as a young designer, the big challenge that I had was that I just wanted to do everything fast and cool. And he was the type of person that like really specifically fed into me this idea that it's like, it's okay to go a little bit slower and do it perfectly in order to achieve something that is better ultimately. And I think that learning moment changed me as a creative and really kind of established the way that I wanted to lead.
That's a very valuable lesson, slowing down. Did you ever get the sense with these queer bosses that they were like, hey, don't fuck this up because we're the only ones here? we have to look like we're like almost like overachieving just to qualify your queerness or gayness in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely experienced that throughout my life. It's funny, I would say specific to that question, my lens, that has come from my mom more so than anyone else. Definitely growing up, there was just like a ton of pressure to be exceptional at everything that I did. Like I needed to be good at everything, especially at school. And so like, I definitely, there's this quote like, be twice as good to get half as far. My mom said that all the time. And like, I think in regards to the workforce, I've always felt like I needed to kind of show up and show out and be better than everyone else in order to have the opportunities presented to me. So yeah, that it's interesting because I hadn't thought of it from the perspective of my gay identity, but more so I thought of it from the perspective of my Black identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe that can be a danger, is to the ingredients for an overworked, stressed out creative would be to be a double minority.
Yeah.
To prove your value, and that I'm sure that imposter syndrome, I've experienced that to some degree, but not being a double minority, I can't really fully empathize. But it sounds like you pushed through all of that and came out a positive creative director. A lot of the creative directors,
before you dive into the next question, I wanted to ask you, so like specific to like, what's the biggest benefit of your queer identity, especially in answering a creative brief?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think that a lot of us have gone through a come to Jesus moment with your identity if you're an out queer, and that might mean that you're a little more empathetic for other people's suffering, and it might also mean you're able to shapeshift or get into the brain of someone else's identity. And the reason I say that is because I didn't come out till I was 24. So for 24 years, I was basically my creative brief was be straight. And I was successful to certain degrees. Some people might disagree with that. But coming out of that, then maybe you're given a creative brief where, like the example for me is working on anything that I've done for Nike, and I'm not a sports fan in any way, shape, or form. But then figuring out how to solve creatively for people that you don't know, you've never met, and culturally you're not connected to. And this happens a lot at agencies where you're working on a client and you never use the product. Maybe you even hate the product. Like there's people working on Velveeta cheese commercials, who are vegan. So how is that possible? And I think that the process of coming to terms with your heart and your identity might set you up for success in answering a creative brief successfully, if the target audience is a group that you've never known.
Yeah.
What do you think?
About, like that idea of like empathy leads to curiosity to me, and that is the piece that like I think we as queer people tend to like just be more interested in understanding why people think the way they think. And like, I feel like we have a little bit more investment in like acknowledging people where they are. And I think that honestly is what makes me good at my job, right? It's like, I feel like I deeply, like you said, empathize with them, but like also I care about why they make the decisions they make and can put it into my work, you know? Like that piece of the puzzle is like, I think the key to like why we're good at what we do.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful kind of like, you go through the sacred suffering and then you come out, if you have chosen this industry, you can come out to be a potent individual, and you may have outsized influence because of the things we just talked about. And I think that's worth celebrating. I mean, it doesn't mean that teams need to be full of queer people, right? But they can be like a secret weapon or like a little piece of dynamite in the agency, which is cool. On the topic of early bosses, a lot of times, well, I think everybody knows how much the industry is driven by straight white males, and a lot of them are in leadership. And a lot of them are rewarded for exhibiting the behaviors of the 20th century that are, you know, manipulative or toxic or antisocial. Just curious what your experience has been there. And it's very clear to me that you're not that, and you're a creative director now. Did you have a moment where you're like, I pledge to not be this type of leader. I pledge instead to be this radiant, positive human being that is expressing my voice. Did you have that moment?
Yeah, I think the funniest challenge that I went through early in my career is that I'm a super nice guy. Like I'm just a nice dude all around. And I had to learn how to channel a little bit of my dickiness in order to be successful. And like, I think like biggest
Just keep that wrong.
I think
I'm getting red in the face.
what I learned was that I have to balance my masculine and feminine energy in order to be successful in this field. And like I think you can lead with your heart and still stand your ground. And that was the kind of space that I had to learn and build from. And I will say, like from past leaders, that was not fully expressed to me until at my last agency. My boss was this tiny 4'11" woman that like commanded authority in the most incredible way. So she's like smart, she's talented, and she's like exceptionally kind. And I think those three qualities, I was like, she is the boss that I want to be. And I think she just did this miraculous job of like deep listening and understanding and like feeding into our employees while still holding them accountable to meeting the expectations of the responsibilities. And I feel like channeling those things have made me one of the best leaders. Yeah, it's interesting how like different people can speak to different parts of your heart at different phases in your life.
Even when they're 4'11", I love that.
Yeah. Allie, I love you. She's probably not watching, but
Okay. How's it going during COVID, being a leader and kind of caring for a team? I'm curious about, you know, check-ins, quantity of check-ins, quality of check-ins, kind of like, how's that going for you?
Yeah, it's weird. To be honest, like working from home is not my favorite thing in the world. Like I'm not here for it at all. I want to go in an office and separate my work and home life. But I'm fortunate to have a job, and I'm thankful that our agency is relatively stable during these like very, very strange times. What has been really important to me is like really making sure that, you know, camera is always on. You can see my face. I'm trying to make sure that I like send my team members like Slacks all the time just to be like, hey, I saw this thing, it reminded me of you. Or like, hey, just checking in. You said that you're feeling a little under the weather. Are you feeling better now? Just like little bits of like, I see you as a human being and I care about you. And even though I can't like go over to your desk and shoot the shit with you, at least I can like try to have that water cooler moment like via Slack conversation whenever possible. Yeah, it's weird. It's different. And I'd say like productivity is all over the place because like some of my team members have kids, some of my team members don't. And so some people are like, you know, workaholics going nuts and like pulling 10-hour days in a time when I don't understand how they can do it. And then other team members are like, oh, I can do 4 hours and I'll do my best in that 4 hours to get everything done. And so like it's these are strange times, honestly. Like it's just a weird time. How has it been for you?
Well, luckily I kind of became unofficeable before COVID. And now I'm just like rogue freelance creative director, which, you know, I really appreciate and I'm grateful for the work. Cause I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't have continuous work through this, and especially I'm in the experience side, like almost all events are canceled. So it's really, a lot of my experiential designer friends are struggling. So that's odd. And I think we all just realized how much of a niche or cottage industry we were in like a very like short period of time where like all clients canceled everything at the same time. But now, like you mentioned, the human aspect, checking in, I feel like, I don't know, things feel so much more clear as far as I'm a human, I'm struggling, you're struggling, but let's try to make something together. There's like that grounding connection first, which maybe I never had before. And, you know, everyone's on the equal playing field because we're all being thrown the same amount of stresses every day. Everyone, a lot of people are doom scrolling the same amount that I am. And so connecting on that base level of like, you know, we start the Zoom meeting where your hair's a little frazzled and you don't have your lashes on and you're just kind of like, okay, let's get through this thing. And that feels good to like be a human in the design industry again, or for the first time. That's what, you know, we should have been this way from the beginning. I've been in many agencies where people just walk up to your desk and make demands when you're a junior. And it was one of my colleagues who actually taught me how to stop that person and to ask them how their day is going before they make a demand on you. You know, human beings. Got to talk to them a little bit, believe it or not. So I did have a few moments of creative paralysis, kind of a freak out right when COVID kind of became real for everybody. And I had a really difficult time engaging in the act of creativity. All the ideas that are usually swimming in my head, they all just kind of like evaporated for a good 3 to 4 weeks. Did you experience any creative paralysis?
Yes and no. I would say like it's been on and off in that fortunately, like in a lot of ways, and this is weird to me to even say out loud, like being a creative director is not specifically a creative job. Like I feel like so much of my work is around structuring presentations and preparing to present, right? And so it's like leading the team, making sure that they get everything done effectively, and then prepping for the presentation to the client is like the majority of my day-to-day. And so it's been really useful for me personally because like my routine is all around creativity for personal projects. And so one big thing that I've been doing relatively recently, and especially more frequently, I send out this weekly email called Curious Tribe. And it's just these like little heartfelt notes to people about self-care. And for this full year, despite the challenges of COVID, I've been able to successfully send out one of these every single week. And that piece of the puzzle, having this one creative project that's solely mine, that I can invest my time and energy into, that's like more about me taking my internal experiences and sharing them with the world, that has been the best and most meaningful relief, honestly, in these strange times, because I feel like I have like a little bit of a public space to kind of work through my feelings and share it with people.
I'm really glad you bring that up. So are you just trusting your gut on that? Are you overthinking it? Or are you just going for it?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, do I trust my gut or do I just go for it? I feel like it for me feels like one of those things where it's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. The backstory is in 2016, I started going to therapy, and I was able to unpack all of these like kind of emotional challenges that I had not allowed myself to wrestle with. And like through that process, I feel like I just started to discover all these new layers of depth internally. And like the learnings that I was having in that moment were necessary. It felt really important to me to kind of share these kind of bite-sized action steps that people can take to kind of have a happier and healthier life. It just felt like that was the work that I needed to do. And so like when you say, am I trusting my gut? It's like, yes. And sometimes I feel like I still question everything I do, right? I'm still a creative at heart. And in a lot of ways, I think a part of the creative process is not always being sure, but kind of acting despite the internal feelings. But like, I mean, honestly, like when you think about trusting your creative process when you don't have a brief, how do you feel?
It's a new sensation that I'm developing now.
Yeah.
It was part of my New Year's resolution was just, I wrote on a piece of paper, trust, trust, trust. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of reasons to not trust yourself as a creative or a queer creative, just in general. When you remove the client, remove the artifice of the products or the marketplace, what do we have to say of value that, you know, we have learned from our life experience? And can we say it in with the same creative process that we use with clients? And the answer is yes, we can. And it can be super powerful. Like, you know, there's a lot of really powerful moments on your Instagram feed. Your most recent ask is, how would your life be different if you saw yourself as sacred? That's a very deeply moving core question. And self-trust is definitely like a new sandbox for me to play in. When I've removed clients and briefs and kind of like remembering why I entered this industry in the first place is because I love art and design. I love communication. I love effective filmmaking. And sometimes shorts, 60s, 30s, 20s can feel like little films. And that compels me. So trusting myself in the things that I'm interested in to make work that compels me is really fun and powerful. It's like, oh shit, I could be a creative director and remove myself from the industry. And that is a totally, you know, like that's a COVID thought, right? Where you're like, do I like this? You know, especially in the context of broadcast media, because in my experience, a lot of it can be very manipulative to get people to buy something they don't actually need. And the value question there is, do I want to continue to support this? And can I trust myself to make something different? And it's really cool to see someone who's already doing that. That's you.
I mean, well, I'm interested though, like when we talk about personal projects, like what do personal projects look like for you right now? Like, I want to know more about, like, especially like maybe over the past few months, what have you been working on? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I've been world building. This background is kind of like a little snapshot of the things that the type of world that I want to live in looks like what's behind me, which is irradiated by a nuclear neon color palette, filled with shiny objects, backlit light glows, all the things that I would put in my home. That's how I want to see the world. And so I've taught myself 3D. I've become my own little client where I'm directing my baby 3D skills into something that's, you know, usable. So it's a mixture of sculptural furniture, world building, and the concept of imminent futurism, meaning the future doesn't come, we build it now. So if we want to see a better workplace, we build that now. If we want to see things look differently than they did in the Victorian era, we build that now. And by we, I mean us in the creative industry today. So that's what I'm working on, and it's fun to, like I said, play in that sandbox, and I'm sure that, you know, I will mature that over time because it's literally been 3 months.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what does that look like for you? I mean, I already know what it looks like visually, but when you're working on personal projects outside of your Instagram feed, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, so in the past, like the immediate past few months, aside from doing the weekly email, the big thing that has been important to me is really working to amplify Black voices. And so I'm in one of those groups that's like a little bit nervous to go outside during this time. I've actually been fully social distancing, and it is terrible, but I think necessary. And it's been really difficult and challenging. And I have a very tiny quarantine crew that I hang out with, but for the most part, have like not done anything for the past few months, which is making me go a little crazy, not gonna lie. But I think a way that I wanted to be a part of this national moment was to work on this 100 Black Voices project. And so what I did was I curated a list of 100 Black creatives that are making content regularly on Instagram. And so I felt like it was this like very small, tiny way that I could kind of provide value to the world, and also to kind of shine a light on people that aren't the big creators that everyone follows. One of my core criteria was that it had to be someone with less than 25,000 followers. And that meant that I had to do a lot of digging to find the people. And a lot of my process was around like, okay, I came up with this list of 25 people, and then I emailed them each directly and say, who are 3 people you would nominate to be on this list? And like, I was able to kind of very slowly it took about like 6 weeks to put it together and get it live on the site. And so that was one of those things where it was like, it's not some like groundbreaking political protest, right? This is like me trying to make a tiny dent in a way that I can control.
Yeah, I love that. I think that for a lot of those people who were either uncomfortable with or didn't want to get exposed at physical protests, there's so much else in the world that's inviting us to engage. And it's almost like the concept of filling the world with propaganda, even though the word propaganda has a negative connotation. The work that you've done there is super usable and accessible and so timely. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I imagine that probably took a lot of energy.
Yeah, it was definitely a much needed good distraction. I needed that distraction.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a total aside. So I'm hoping that you are aware of this. Like I'm really hoping. When I was little, there was a chat app called The Palace. Do you happen to be familiar with this? Please say yes.
No.
So basically, like, this is AOL days, and like everybody was talking to each other on Instant Messenger. They created this immersive world basically where you would go to a house party, and the concept was basically that there were individual rooms in this mansion, and so you could create a character, and then you could go in a room and talk to people via text. You could have individual chats, you could have group chats, but you could actually see these characters that represent each individual person. And the funniest thing is when I look at the worlds that you are building, it feels like the next step, right? Like when we're ready to go into virtual reality chat rooms, like this is the room that I want to hang out in. I'm sure you want to bring it to real life, but like I could see it being virtual too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm all about that. Like if we want to enter the century, we can't, one of the ways we can enter the century is visually.
Yes.
Politics.
Keep going.
Okay.
So questions coming in. We're about time. So wrap up and get some questions.
Well, I especially wanted to ask you, Justin, what advice would you have given yourself when you first graduated?
Yeah, I would say lean into the awkward moments. I've always been one of those people that like tries to make other people feel good. And I think that has its place in the world and can be beneficial. Like I think it's a positive skill, but I think allowing that awkward tension to exist is meaningful. I think sitting in those awkward moments help make progress in the right way. And instead of backpedaling, I think the biggest advice I would give to young Justin is like, it's okay for things to be a little awkward. Like let them be uncomfortable and they will figure it out.
Mm,
What about you?
beautiful. I would say vet your employers. As much as they're vetting you, I think it's valuable to vet them. If I was a fresh graduate, I would look at everyone's social feed from May 25 to Juneteenth, see if they literally lifted a single finger. And then I would also look at, people's, looking up people's work history and their body of work, and then asking them tough questions in the interview. I think that as employees, we really have got to lift the veil. If we're walking into a workplace that is full of toxic male behavior from the 20th century that's like still dwindling 20 years later, or if people don't actually trust their creatives, which is super common, as I'm sure both of us have experienced. And so just like remembering that we can vet the people that we collaborate with and work for. And if I would have known that when I graduated, I would have saved myself probably 4 to 5 years of teeth gnashing, wondering why I went into this industry when it was so hard, or it was so fun looking in school, and then walking into all of these kind of like weird workplaces that weren't actually meant to support me, as a young queer. They were meant to cut my wings off as they were still growing. So I like that. Our answers are both completely different.
I mean, honestly, like we're like mirrors in that like very similar career trajectories, but like just totally different experiences. And then it comes to life in such different ways too, which is, I mean, it's cool. I'm happy I got to meet you. This is
Yeah, same. It's really nice to know that somebody else had a queer boss. I'm not jealous at all, but like I'm kind of jealous.
What are these questions? What do we have?
Yeah, so we've got some questions, and going to sit in that awkward moment before I broke in, and now going to move right in. So now it is time for question and answer. We've got some great ones. I think kind of taps on what y'all were just talking about. Pride Month just ended. What campaigns stood out, and what brands got it right, and who missed the mark? No pressure, but a little bit.
You want to go for it?
I hate to say it, I'm not 100% confident I know who got it right. I will say Skittles did the same campaign again. Initial year, what they did was making the bag white, and saying something along the lines of there's only one rainbow that matters. It's a pride rainbow, I think. And then they gave a portion of proceeds to some organization. This year, I think they revisited that campaign, and instead of the bag being white, they made it gray. And I will say that like making the bag gray worked a little bit better for me, but I was unclear on if they also gave funds to people this year. So that piece of the puzzle was a little nebulous and didn't sit well with me if they did not. But in the general sense, it felt a little bit pandery for me. And like, I am more in alignment with people that actually like, I don't know, when you connect with real human beings to like try to make an impact, that usually hits my heart a little bit deeper. And so like the Skittles thing was a miss for me.
It does feel like a lot of performance. And so I try to limit my criticism of it because I just don't want to engage necessarily. And this year in particular felt really nice to see people like Ben and Jerry's step up and support, the Black Lives Matter movement in multiple formats. And it didn't feel performative. And, so we paused Pride Month for a year. We can do that because other people need our help a little more right now. And Ben and Jerry's, in my opinion, crushed that. More questions. Look at that.
Oh yeah, we've got some great questions. So, we talked about what was going on in quarantine, and you talked a lot about instinct. How do you keep your instinct sharp when you are in quarantine? Can't interact, can't do the side, walk up to someone's desk and talk. How do you keep all that fresh when you're, in your virtual world or at home in your bubble?
You want to go first this time?
We'll go with the virtual world. We're gonna put him on the spot. Virtual world.
Oh, you're asking me. Okay. I had to get more disciplined. I had to wake up early. I had to have definitive working hours. I couldn't just work when I was inspired because, as I mentioned, I went into creative paralysis. So I reintroduced discipline back into my practice, which is something that I had done when I was younger and kind of was forming my creative practice. And I have to say it was a nice reminder of how I wanted to work in the future. Through disciplined like work hours, and then also being able to turn it off and like put the laptop down and walk away. So I just kind of like gave myself tighter constraints, and kind of like the artist's way mode of writing and reflecting, still looking at a lot of input every day to keep myself aware of what's happening in the world, visually in the arts scene. But then realizing that, you know, I maybe don't need to work as much as I did before. And I need to, this could be the work, taking care of this temple could be the work. And so that has helped me stay sharp and keep my instincts vibrant, because if I didn't pay attention to this, I would definitely be eating chips and smoking weed and just carb loading and sodium loading and just become eventually a slug on the sofa because of all the stress. So temple first, then discipline, then work.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd say I'm relatively similar to you in that I started intermittent fasting, which like changed everything about my life. Like when you can't eat until 12 or 1 p.m., you have all this extra time in the day, which is so funny to me. But specifically around like how to make sure that I'm getting creative input. I have fallen into the YouTube rabbit hole. I feel like I'm super late to the party, like 100% super late to the party. But like there are these Gen Z kids that are making incredible, interesting content that is meaningful, that is different than anything I've ever seen. And they are keeping me young and fresh, and hopefully like helping me to like maintain some semblance of relevancy as I get older. I'm in my mid-30s now, and so I'm like, I'm getting to that point where I'm like, oh, I'm the old dude in the room, you know? So like, specifically, there is this new trend that has been mind-boggling to me. So our generation, I would say millennials, we were the first generation to be like, I am a creative. I'm a creative as like a term, right? Like, prior to that, it was like, I'm a creative person. It's like, no, I'm a creative. And the new Gen Z term is I'm aesthetic. And it's just like they have co-opted this word that has a slightly different meaning to have like a visual direction that is very intriguing to me. And like, so I have been obsessing over all the different like aesthetic as like a viewpoint, right? And then all the subgenres under aesthetic, specifically these terms, soft boy, soft girl, e-boy, e-girl, baddie, and there's one more I'm forgetting, but I feel like I have like, I'm in it. I'm fully into YouTube young Gen Z culture.
I love that. I don't know, late or not, it doesn't matter. Like everyone's on YouTube. You know, like you can't compete with the numbers there. And that is probably the answer is YouTube for staying fresh.
So I'm going to want a glossary of terms later on because I didn't understand any of that. As an elder millennial, you're a producer here. And thinking of that, you know, you had talked about having queer bosses and what that was like for you, whether you had them or didn't. Now that you are kind of, you know, you're the boss. What do you do to help nurture queer, you know, creatives coming up or staff? And how do you take what you've learned to be a boss that is queer?
Yeah, I really get jazzed and energized by investing in my team in a variety of ways. The biggest one for me is I do a one-on-one with every team member every single week, no matter what. That is like a non-negotiable. And in these one-on-ones, we like, you know, it's like the normal download of here's the client work that you're doing. And then we talk about any challenges that they ran into and like kind of problem solve on how to work through those challenges. But then the core of it is kind of using this kind of teacher mindset and specifically sowing seeds into their growth by teaching them something specific. And so I try to work with my team members to figure out like what do they want their career path to be. So for example, I have some employees that want to be creative directors. I have some employees that want to be a senior graphic designer or a senior art director or whatever. And so like based on the track that they've chosen, I kind of push them in these weekly meetings with like tools to like kind of move up and continue to grow and develop. So it can be, for example, okay, you want to be an associate creative director. In order for you to become an associate creative director, one thing I need you to work on is your public speaking skills. And so every chance that I have to give them a public speaking opportunity, I will push them into it. And sometimes it's a little bit of a fight, but it's like I sit in that awkward moment and go, you said you want to be an associate creative director? This is what you got to do to get there. So that piece of the puzzle has been a big part of my leadership style.
That's beautiful. I love that. Can I come work for you? I try to stay engaged with the university that I graduated from, Portland State University, and they have a very hands-on program and bring in a lot of mentors. And so mentorship is kind of a really important part of my practice. So senior portfolio reviews, and there's also like this fresh graduate showcase called Fresh. And then there's another one called Be Honest. They all come out of the same school. And so being on those panels and having one-on-one and group mentorship is kind of like, you know, as this is how I try to foster that queer leadership, but I'm not leading queers, you know, like I just, you know, am this irradiated space lizard trying to give positive reinforcement to students. I'm not sure if that was the question.
I feel
I'm
like
not sure if that was, but yeah, it worked.
I feel like to that point though, like by virtue of being like a queer person and showing up, to a certain extent, we end up being role models, right? Like whether it be to, you know, our straight comrades that we work with, or like people in the community that we might not even know, you know, like especially in this Instagram worthy world, like it's like my hope is that like the messages that I send out are hitting the right people and like inspiring like, you know, little young Justin that is 20 something and ready to kind of, you know, be in the advertising field.
Run away, it's a trap. Advertising kills.
I love ads, just to say it out loud. Like that's my jam still.
Yeah, you gotta keep perspective, man.
So speaking of jams, like I'm just going to take this on a complete left field here. One of the big questions is, what's your current background music while you create your best stuff? So like, what's your songs?
You should
Can I shout it out?
Yeah.
Enya. It has to be Enya. we let the healing begin. We need her. We deserve her. Iconic, groundbreaking, never the same. All of that. Like, just go through the full discography. I played Enya during my final Google interviews. I was wearing 6-inch rainbow platform shoes and a sequin jacket, and I was like, "Do you mind if I play Enya?" You know, just gotta like advocate for yourself sometimes and play Enya during your job interview. That's my answer.
I love it. I love it. I am a strange bird when it comes to this. I actually sit in my house in total silence while working. Yeah. So like from 8:30 to 12, it is dead silent in the Shiels household. And from 1 until 6:30, it is dead silent. I don't have background music playing almost ever. Just
Okay,
nice.
I'd like to retract my application to work for you.
I mean, do what you need to do.
Could I
This is
softly play Enya in the background when we're gonna brief? I mean, throw me. That's cool. I don't think I could do that. I don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm the only person like this, like honestly. And actually yesterday I was trying to listen to music. Because I just got a Google Home and I'm trying to listen to songs in the background. I'm like, I can't think. I don't know. I can't focus. So I don't know.
You
That's my
found your
ADD.
way. You don't need it.
But
Yeah. Wow.
super weird. Sorry.
So we have more questions, but I'm still trying to figure out how to comprehend what just happened here. Because I also, between the Space Lizard wanting Enya and then Justin having no music, I'm not sure where this is going. But the question I have for everyone is, um, how do you find balance between being self-taught and refining your creativity versus actually tapping into others to learn? So I'm going to read that one again. It's a dense question. It's meaty. How do you find balance between being self-taught and refining your creativity versus actually tapping into others to learn? So I guess that kind of going with your gut, your own ideas versus looking to others for inspiration and mentorship. That's my interpretation. Now I want yours. Go.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a hard one.
I would say in our industry, there are table stakes, right? So you do need to have like a deep understanding of the principles of design or the principles of copywriting in order to like play the game, right? So like, I'd say that's the first thing that is necessary to learn. And then secondarily, I'd say like you need to have a deep understanding of the history of art and architecture. I think those help people to have a taste level and be able to like make interesting, innovative work. And then I'd say the next tier is like really like figuring out who is a contemporary creator that you're passionate about. And then I'd say like the challenge that this person is kind of talking about is really like taking the person that you're inspired by, finding the historical source that they were inspired by, and figuring out how you translate that into something that you would make. And like I'm a big proponent of this idea that like there aren't they're not really like no one's an original anymore. Like we've missed that moment now. But I think there is something beautiful. There's a beautiful alchemy that can happen when you take something you love, something that's old in yourself, and put all those things together. And that's how you can make something that is like somewhat new. Yeah, I think I answered it. I don't know. That is my
I think you did. I think you did. It's a dense question. I actually find myself doing equal parts of both. I'm self-teaching a lot, and YouTube is a major player in that. There, for any technical design problem you have, there is a 12-year-old in Australia who has a channel that can answer that question for you, who's streaming from his parents' basement, and then tapping into others to learn. I mean, I love a good masterclass, and there's so many available, and a lot of them are quite cheap. There's a platform called Domestika with a K, and a lot of their classes are $10, and they're very good classes. So self-teaching is a requirement of the modern era, in my opinion, and being inspired by others who are doing the same keeps us like rowing our canoe a little faster, down the stream of our career, because it'd be very easy to get complacent and be like, well, I went to art school and I have experience, so I'm good. No, actually, you're not good. The marketplace is evolving so quickly now that we must also relearn a lot of skills or relearn paradigms or ways of creating and expressing ourselves. It's a really good question. I think that self-teaching is one of the most powerful tools in this decade, because a lot of people are questioning the price of universities and what they're getting from them, and they're walking into a workforce that's already possibly changed based on what they studied. So self-teaching is the way, and you could self-teach yourself multiple revenue streams in 6 months and change your life. That's just a fact.
Wait, what class have you taken from Domestika? Or like, what's one class you've taken that you just really enjoyed?
I took motion design school, which was focused on Cinema 4D and in-program render called Redshift.
Yeah.
It just had like very contemporary lighting, and like the teaching was very easy for me to follow. It was like, this one was a little more expensive. It was like $300, and I did it over a period of 6 weeks. And I learned so much, so fast, because I was motivated to learn it as well. And then I was able to create worlds that what I was looking for and never found on the internet. I was just making it myself. So in that way, you can also invent new niches inside of the industry by self-teaching. Because as a creative, like if you self-teach yourself a new skill in the creative industry to make something that people haven't seen necessarily before, or from someone like you, then you're creating an industry. You're becoming a mini industry. And I think that is highly powerful.
That's awesome. I've taken the other lens, which is funny. Like, it was like, I started in graphic design and art direction background. And so almost all of my self-study has been tied to like learning copywriting, because like, I wanted to have the authority in the room to say this is good copy or not good copy. And like, so it's weird. I do feel like in some ways I have not continued to explore in the art direction in the like more immediate years, and have instead been like putting all of my attention in like learning strategy or learning copywriting.
That's cool. Well, somebody should give us a creative brief together, because it would be like when a lightning bolt strikes a rainbow.
Yes.
Sparkles out.
And that is the perfect way to wrap up this great conversation. I feel the last question came from Justin, and it was absolutely perfect. And the response to end on a lightning bolt hitting a rainbow, I can't think of anything more beautifully, perfectly queer to end this thing. So we're going to bring Kate back in, and she's unmuted herself, and we've got Kate.
Hey guys. Justin, Aaron, that was amazing. I think you've proven like without question or without a moment of doubt that you can get inspiration and education in the creative space from anywhere, whether that's self-started or taught from somebody else. This has been a fantastic, truly fantastic experience watching you guys. I would like to be a part of that brief as well. I don't know what I would be if I wasn't the lightning bolt or the rainbow, maybe the cloud. I don't know. I'm in.
The sky, Kate.
The sky. Perfect.
Can she be the pot of gold?
Like, yes, I'm into that. And I'm part Irish. So listen, I think this has been fantastic. I hope everybody that's been listening has appreciated it as much as I have. I've literally been here basically eating popcorn and digesting all of it. It's been amazing. But I think that concludes this episode of Hey Fam for Do the Work. But please check out, for everybody that's watching, other episodes of Hey Fam or Office Hours with our other good friend, Brian Vaughn, tomorrow. You can find all the scheduling for all of our programming at dothework.com. And that's work spelled W-E-R-Q. See what we did there? At the website, you can also sign up for more updates. You can get community connections and activities there. But also, we ask, please follow us at Do the Work on Twitter and Instagram. We're always looking to get more followers, because that will get more audience tune in. And this is important stuff, as you can see from Justin and Aaron. This content is amazing, and it's really powerful, and it's lovely and amazing to see queer voices and queer community come together. You can also follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. And thank you to everybody that tuned in today. We really appreciate you guys watching, and a special thanks to Justin and Aaron. You guys are innovative and inspirational, and it has been a without question defining and best part of my week. So really appreciate it, guys. And so with that, everybody else go enjoy your life. But this has been an episode of Hey Fam at Do the Work.